What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Apollo. So as a member of the Alton Towers team, I was very fortunate to go and experience the colleague preview night for Alton Towers Scarefest. If you don't know what Scarefest is, it is the annual Halloween events that Alton Towers run at the theme park, which normally consists of a few new scare maze attractions, scare zones, and also some offerings for the younger guests, thrills and frights. With this colleague preview event, we got to experience everything that was going to be offered across the next few weeks for the resort. So that does include the brand new additions for the Alton Towers Scarefest event, Edge of the Forest, A Dark Forest Story, and Dark Hollow, along with the returning Scarefest mazes and attractions, including Altonville Mine Tours Tiny's Revenge, Compound, and Burial Grounds as well. Nearly forgot the one there. There is also the family thrills that you do have there as Migos in the Afterlife and Trick or Treat Town with Haribo. So in this video, as part of getting to experience that preview, I thought I'd give you my thoughts and insights into the event as a whole, what you should be looking forward to, and of course talking about those new attractions, whether you should be investing your money in it. So if you're going to enjoy this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and without further ado, let's get straight into this Halloween event. Now, Scarefest over the years has kind of had its ups and downs. 2023 felt like kind of a bit of a low for the event. Mazes didn't really have a refresh. Attractions were coming back year on year, and it didn't really seem like the event was moving forward compared to the likes of Thorpe Park Fright Nights, which, given the market that it's targeting, really did invest and really did showcase some really great new Scarefest attractions. 2024, not only was it my first year of getting to experience the event, I've wanted to go for some time, but it did start to feel like there was a bit of a change coming with the addition of Compound, the Nemesis themed attraction based around Forbidden Valley being the centre of attention for the last 2 years. Now this year it does seem like that once again Scarefest is just building and building itself to getting back onto being that top UK Halloween event with those 2 new attractions, this time themed to the Dark Forest area of the park. It's nice to see, to get away from something like Daz Games Panic and the Attic Terror the Towers, you know, seeing those attractions that, especially in Daz's games, had such a mixed reception. To see them go back to the drawing board and actually make use of some of the environment that they have around with them, it's a really nice opportunity to invest in your rides, invest in the IPs that you've already made with your attractions, and build some really nice, deep, logical stories there. Because Dark Forest really does have an ambitious area with the 13 taking over from Ugland back in 2010 with its opening. So to see not only 1 but 2 attractions themed around that idea of the ride, it's a really nice addition as well. Now also bear in mind, there has been a lot of changes with the entertainment team. As we know, Merlin Entertainments did see themselves let go from the company in a cost-cutting saving measures from Merlin and bringing in RWS Global, who have done loads of Halloween events across the parks and across Europe as well, with the likes of Europa Park. So it would be interesting to see there how they were going to live up to the park and also meet the demands of the Scarefest attractions in the UK. Now, straight off the bat, when we got to go to the colleague preview event, we got to experience everything that there was. Firstly, I got a team member hoodie, which cost 20 quid. I don't know if this is going to be yourself for the general public, but that's a nice little touch for any colleagues that went to the event or anybody that was looking to get a hoodie. First and foremost, you can instantly tell that a lot more creative discussion has been taking place into making the event feel themed across the whole park. Not only does Tower Street look great with the bunting, the Halloween decorations, the big Scarefest sign being put out on the front lawns, Spooky 2 hearse being put out right opposite Towers Trading Company. But as you go around the park, there seems to be a lot more theming around the areas. You know, there was a lot of complaints last year that apart from Tower Street, once you entered way into the park, it didn't really feel like that Halloween event vibe carried on. And now I can say, when you go around the park, there is a lot more theming. There's a lot of the characters from the Halloween events for the younger guys that have been placed around the area. So there's one in X Sector. There's a nice bit of theming across the bridgeway between Mutiny Bay and as if you're heading to the Towers or the Dark Forest area. There's some stuff in Katanga Canyon. Mutiny Bay's got some nice photo opportunities as well. It's stuff like that that really helps to immerse your guests into the event and let them know it's Halloween, rather than just keeping it within that certain section of the park. Otherwise, you're paying a lot of money. And bear in mind, it is a lot of money for these Halloween events as well. So it's nice to see them taking that extra consideration into putting the event in theming throughout the park. We've also got a change in the event of the scare entertainment. So normally when you come onto the front lawns, you'd have the stage right on the front lawns overlooking the lake. However, this year it's been moved and put into the Mutiny Bay courtyard in between where Mutiny Bay and Wicker Man sit, there is always that massive little square space where the welcome in is. Within that section there is where the entertainment's taking place this year. Didn't get to see it, however, I did get a glimpse as it's walking by, and kind of having that intimate crowd setting, it's going to make it feel like a little bit of a busier, fluctuating atmosphere there. And I think that's what they kind of needed. Because when you walked out to the front lawns, although it was this massive staple and this massive area for a lot of benches and guests, for the most part, guests weren't using that area. No matter what you would say, you can walk past it and you wouldn't see anybody, you know, sitting there watching the shows. And it's a waste on the talent as well that's being used to provide these entertainment shows, because they're performing their hearts out. And when there's a very little crowds in there with very little atmosphere, because they're in the middle of the front lawns, when everybody's wanting to go experience the rides and the docks, we're going to do the scare attractions. It's a bit of a waste of entertainment. So having it in that little enclosed, smaller space, I think will be much more better and it will provide a great atmosphere for the younger ones. Before we do go into the actual main thrills and scares of the event, I do just want to briefly touch on the family thrills that the park is offering. Once again, it is still the same in the sense of Haribo Land, Trick or Treat Town, and also Amigos in the Afterlife. Now, last year I never got to experience either one of those because I didn't book it. This year we got to go and experience one of them. We did Trick or Treat Town. Now, this is a really nice family attraction if you're wanting to get your little kids immersed into the Halloween spirit without being scared, because there's no real scares within it. It's some really great themed characters, a nice little bit of set pieces, especially when you get to go around knocking on the doors, and of course you get treated in nicely big bags of Haribo. So it's a nice way to get your kids interacted into the Halloween event without obviously coming up into the spooks and thrills. Now, we would have done Amigos in the Afterlife, however we were told by others that it's about a 30 to 45 minute walkthrough. Now bear in mind, we only had 3 hours. When we actually came to experience that portion of the park, we'd only had an hour left on the event and we still wanted to do Dark Hollow, Edge of the Forest and Altonville Mine Tour. So unfortunately we did have to leave that one there. The theming around there is still the same. I imagine the maze is still going to be roughly the same. Bear in mind, we've actually booked it for another few weeks to go. I want to go with the partner. So when we're going to get to experience that, we're going to get the opinions there and go and see what it's like for ourselves there. But that's obviously something that we didn't unfortunately get to experience at the Collie Preview Night. However, if you are looking to bring your younger ones to it, definitely go experience both of those, because there are some nice introduction events to get them built into the Halloween experience without being too overwhelmed by the scares and spooktaculars. But without further ado, let's go and get straight into the scare mazes and scare zones. First and foremost, let's start with the scare zones that the park is offering. Normally for the last 2 years, the park has only offered one scare zone in Burial Grounds. However, this year, as part of a kind of continuous redevelopment of the event, the park sees 2 scare zones brought into the fold of the event, which I think is a really good touch. Bear in mind, these scare zones are free of entry, so if you've already paid for your theme park admission, you don't need to be paying extra for the scare zones. It's only the scare mazes and the family scare mazes that you need to be paying those extra charges for. So this is a really nice way of getting people encouraged into the event, getting them an introduction of kind of what it's going to be like within the mazes if you wanted to spend that money without obviously having to make that extra charge up front. Because bear in mind, with these scare mazes and scare zone run throughs, it's not always going to be the best of experience for everybody. You may get a perfect run, you may get a very bad run. And that's why I want to kind of preface this just by saying that there are going to be spoilers for the event going forward from this mark. So if you are watching now and do not want to be spoiled on the event, please click off the video. Obviously go and experience the event yourself. Bear in mind, like I said, it's a Scarefest preview night. This is the first time a lot of these mazes have been opened up to guests. It's a lot of the first time that the RWS Global team are actually going to get to perform these scripts, these characters, get to experience this environment. So everything that we've seen last night as of recording would not be 100% reflected across the event in the next month or so. So make that of your own will, and that is the biggest opinion that I can give you on this. Give it a go yourself. Do not go on what I say, do not go on what anybody says on YouTube. Make your own opinions on it, because ultimately, like I said, you may get a much better run than what a lot of people will anticipate. You may find certain things scary, you may find certain things a bit weaker. That's the whole point of this. Give yourself that own opinion and give yourself that own opportunity to go and experience it. So without further ado, let's go and talk about the scare zones then. Firstly, with what we started with was Burial Grounds. This is the Wicker Man themed scare zone. It's adjacent to the Wicker Man queue line, so you're essentially walking around the back of the Wicker Man main queue line towards the start of it. You come out at the top of the Wicker Man lift hill / Katanga Canyon Congo River Rapids pathway there. It's also adjacent to Haunted Hollows pathway, so when you're walking alongside that, you can actually see the exterior of it up at the top to your left. But this walks around the outside of the maze. It's essentially kind of the unchosen of the Wicker Man storyline where you've got the chosen few, the chosen ones. These ones are kind of like the rejects of the Bjorn and have been left to their own festering area. They still worship the Wicker Man, but even they know they're not worthy enough to go and experience the ceremony of the Bjorn. Now, what I like about this event is with the openness and also just the general theming that goes into the event, there's some really nice fire effects as well. There's a few great scares. It's quite tightly packed scare zone as you're walking through, and some really good elements there. No real changes again from probably the last 2 years. Everything set wise felt exactly the same as what I experienced last year. However, there did seem an increase in the amount of actors that were going around the maze, and lots of actors really getting into your face, really binding to the characters. We had a few good scares. I loved towards the end as well. There's like a man in a cage, almost kind of symbolising he's been imprisoned by the Wicker Man. We're all focusing on him, and then out of the corner, another one of the actors comes down. It's just scary. It's just like, ooh, really gets you jumping there. At night time, it's definitely more recommended to do it so there you get the full effects of the flame along the sides, that real burning sensation, warm atmosphere, along with some great mood general lighting there. That's really going to help immerse yourself into the event and the actual atmosphere of the scare zone there. As you make your way through, there's a really nice section where you go through this little hut, and the only thing you can see in front of you is just this bright light, but it's completely fogged out. I still think that's a wasted opportunity. I remember saying this last year's review. It still should be someone in there, because I think you would absolutely scare the pants off anybody who went through that point. You just can't see anything. All you've got is just a blinding light in front of you. It's such a great opportunity, and a bit of a missed one there to have an actor scare you from there. But apart from that, there's some great acting, same theming, same real setup for the maze, which I don't really mind as much because it's a scare zone. It's not really, it's not the one that's really going to get you talking the most about it. It just does its job without being too much over the thrill, and is a really nice addition for the park if you're going to go and experience that. Next then, we come up to one of two brand new additions to the Alton Towers Resort. This is Dark Hollow. It is the second scare zone located in the Dark Forest area of the park. It's almost as if, as you're heading up towards the towers, make your way towards Heck, just across to the left where the confectionery stand is. You go down that pathway, and that's actually where you find the entrances for only Edge of the Forest and Dark Hollow. So Edge of the Forest will go off towards the right, and Dark Hollow goes off towards the left on the area. It kind of goes through the trees. There's a little bit of a pathway in between where the entrance to 13 is. If you go off towards the right, going behind the back of Rita, there's a massive pathway there that you used to use between getting you towards the towers and the 13 area. It's kind of all across there for this year, and it is a really, really nicely well-themed attraction. We experienced this at probably 7:30-ish, so it was already going pretty dark at the time, but the theming in the area is really good. It's a continuation of the Dark Forest story of Maze the 13, so you're going to be walking around, you're going to have seen a lot of the 13 girls. Straight away, as soon as you walk in, there's a 13 girl there literally standing opposite you. She's doing that quick little turn. It's a really nice scare there. You walk through it, it all feels like a derelict, abandoned part of the forest, similar to what you'd find in the queue line for 13. There's picnic tables with like tattered umbrellas, food and drink laid all over the table. You've got this really great scene where you're going over just some trees, and there's a lot of hanging teddy bears that really makes to the environment as well. And bear in mind, you've got this nice blue projecting moonlight coming through that to crack through the opening lights between those bears. Oh, it looks great. There's some odd little bits. You've got like graveyard, and there's just a grave man just banging his metal sword along the wall. There's a questionable one where there's a bear. There's a guy dressed in a teddy bear. Now, I don't know if that's meant to represent, a teddy bear, or if it's meant to be an actual bear, but it looked very funny. We was pissing ourselves with how entertaining that was, but that was kind of a nice feature. And then there's also like something that you kind of see in Stitches. There was like the monkeys where you get with like the jambing tambourines. There was one of those there. You got to like a picnic bench. There was like 3 or 4 of them. They're trying to jump on you. They've got these cracked doll masks. We've got baseball bats, and it's really well themed there. Apart from one of them, there's a woman that's going around in like a suit almost, and it was a little bit hard to tell whether she was actually part of the scare zone or if she was part of the entertainment team. She kind of didn't really fit in with the theme. Wasn't really exactly playing well with the storyline, I thought. But it's a really nice combination of characters and some well-themed environments with the lighting. The best bit is definitely towards the end of the scare zone. When you get to the exit, there's a few like wooden panels, so you like got to go through and through. There's a girl that blocks you off to tell you to go through that way, which you go through like the little bit of the trees, the little bit of the foresty area towards 13. But if you look past the girl standing at the fences, you'll see yet again another use of the lighting, but there's a 13 girl there. Now, we were actually questioning if she was real. We had to try and quickly look as much as we can. But it looks incredible visually. You just see the over-cascading shadow of this girl there. You can't see anything facially. You just see the silhouette of a person there. It looks fantastic. And then obviously you led on throughout towards the entrance of where 13 is. It's a really nice addition. I love the theming that's gone into it. It's a lot more free-flowing than what you'd find with Burial Grounds, where it's kind of more stuck to a linear pathway. The theming's great. I thought the character involvement and just general interaction was really nice. And like I said, to theme it into the dark forest area, I think that's a really good, smart opportunity, because it's already got a lot of scary undertones, a lot of negative thoughts. So it's really difficult to maximise that and make that into a scare zone and a scare maze, which we'll get into. It's a really nice addition there, and something that I would definitely recommend anybody to go and experience. With the scare mazes out of the way and you're feeling all ready and pumped up to go and experience the real event of Halloween Scarefest, let's talk about the scare mazes. Now, once again, this year we kind of lost 2 scare mazes compared to last year. We've finally seen a goodbye to the Attic, Terror and the Towers, which for me was probably the weakest of the attractions that was offered on the Scarefest event. Don't get me wrong, the theming of it was pretty good and all, but as a total scare package, it didn't really feel that much of a fright, and you could really tell that it probably aged past its years. We also say a goodbye to Dad's Games Panic, which only lasted 2 years. The technology was great and offered some really good opportunities, but overall it just wasn't really a well-conceived maze, and one that wouldn't really be fondly missed. If it was brought back in the summer, I would have been very much happy with that as an upcharge. It just should never have been offered as a Scarefest attraction in my mind. So this year we see 3 mazes, which I kind of feel is a little bit better, you know, quality over quantity. You don't need so many mazes when you're offering some great quality scares in the ones that you've got, and I think that's what Alton Towers have kind of settled on this year. We obviously see the return of Altonville Mine Tours for what I believe is his 9th year at Halloween Scarefest, this year with the Tiny's Revenge storyline, which I believe was only introduced from 2023. We've also got Compound, which was a fan favourite introduced last year for 2024. Like I said, obviously going on the successful year that has seen with the redevelopment of the Forbidden Valley area. Obviously with Subterra reopening, Nemesis Reborn, and this year seeing Intoxicator reopen. Will Galactica receive the same? Who remains to be seen. But Compound would also stay in place. And then this year would see the introduction of Edge of the Forest, a dark forest story. Now, we got to experience all 3 of these. I'm going to go and start with, in my opinions, from least effective mazes, or the least ones that I enjoyed, to obviously the best. So in number 3, we're going to start with Compound. Now, last year for me, this was my favourite maze. The interaction was superb. The theming was really nice, and to see one themed across a ride, you know, literally within walking distance of the attraction, it was a really nice opportunity. Now, for me this year, I was kind of going into it and sitting there thinking, it doesn't really feel like there's going to be a lot of changes to the maze. The actual gazebo itself has stood up for the rest of the year, so it doesn't really feel like anything was going to change much in there. Would we have seen any set props and maybe some different endings, maybe theme a bit more into the Toxicator idea? Who knows? However, running through it, unfortunately, nothing really has changed this year. First and foremost, we actually had to wait 20 minutes for the actual attraction to open due to managers not being able to sign off, which was a bit ridiculous of a wait. Make of it what you will, these technical issues will happen. But in terms of the actual experience itself, for me personally, it is the weakest of the 3. Now, I only say that because, firstly, the run-throughs I had 2 run-throughs on the evening. We did it to start off the event, and then following that we instantly got back in the queue line and go and experienced it again with a much larger group. For me, I had the exact same run-through that I've had. I've done it 3 times. I did it 1 time last year, 2 times this year, and it's been the exact same run-through that I've had the same year, in the sense of you go through, you get dragged into the like chamber pods this year, which I thought was a really nice touch to really start with, because although it was intense last year, it just feels like the intensity really stepped up this year. We was joking about with one of them that he's only 17, and the guy literally, and I kid you not, grabbed him and was just dragging him almost into the chamber pod. So that level of immersion there really helps to kick in that feeling. You're in your own chamber pods, and already from the start of it, one of the issues I had was the grouping. A number of 14 people within the maze. Last year, I must have went in with only 6-7 people in our group, and then because you all got your own individual pod, you really felt like you was going through the maze on your own, which I think really much damaged it this year for me. There's no sense of being alone. You're all scattering around the same part way. Like, it doesn't have that immersion when you're walking through groups, because you're not going to feel as scared because you've got other people to rely on. Whereas when you're walking with yourself, you are going to be the only one experiencing those scares. And that's where I think it kind of fell short for me. You go through your chamber pods, you watch the video in the centre of the screen being like, oh, you're our test subjects, you're welcome to the compound facility, you're going to get to experience the latest offerings of the phalanx. Doors behind you open, and obviously depending on which way you walk through, you either go through the contamination pods where there's actors banging in there like prisoners of the phalanx, or you're walking through some cages with the odd actor there trying to scare you there. You then meet up into like the centre reservoir of the attraction, and this is where you kind of do get that split up part. There's actors in there guiding you around this like hexagon room. They'll send you through different ways, but for me, I don't know what's in the other ones because I only got to experience the same through. I was sent off to the left of the maze. You go through a nice crawl space and into like this chemical plant bit where there's an actor standing at the other side of the bridge. You've got these toxic waste barrels towards the side of you. That's kind of like floating. It's meant to be themed to Toxicator. You go through there, you end up meeting back up with the other group on the other side of the wall where there's more of the phalanx guards there, like imprisoning you, asking, are you alien or human? To which then you get sent off again into another room. I got dragged off to go through the kitchen scene where there's a bunch of the aliens and some of like the infected guards in there. There's some really nice scares there. You know, some strobe lighting. There's like the aliens hiding behind the barrels and then a fridge in one of them. But they're jumping out and you can see them, but you're just there like, well, in that split second with the strobe lighting, it really helps to disorientate your senses and you can't really understand what's going on there. You go through that bit, and that's really pretty much towards the end of it. You go through more fencing with like guards with tasers. There's like a real rope section that's trying to disorientate you, and there's still guards in there with the tasers. And then you're chased out of there and then to the exit of the maze. Now, like I said, it's not the worst themed maze, and it's not the worst maze of the three, because I still think it's really good for what it is. But for me personally, to only get to experience the same run through that I had last year and the run prior, it really is a weak offering, because I would just like to see a lot more of the maze offerings. But judging by what I did get to experience, it's also a shame that not a lot of the scenes have been updated. Bear in mind, if they just had a little refresh and retooled some of the scenes, it wouldn't be as bad, because there was a mixed reaction to it last year. Some people really enjoyed it, some people thought it was a bit weak, and scare-wise for me, it was also probably the weakest. Like I said, when you already know what you're expecting, you know where this jump scares are going to be coming from, you know where that tension is going to be built, so you can kind of get used to it. But like I said, the theming is really great. It's nice to see that theme to that Nemesis Phalanx area. And it's also just a really nice, intense maze. I would just like to see the batching group go down. I think 14 is way too many people. There's no sense of being alone. You're all grouped together, huddling together, so that sense of scare is gone. And I'd just like to see a little bit more towards the ending of it, because I just think it felt a little bit cheap and tacky, especially with the rope scene. You put 2 or 3 more actors in there with tasers or really going properly at you. I think that's what's going to really help to go with the maze as well. But that was a really interesting run through on Compound that I had there. Following up from that then, we have Altonville Mine Tours Tiny's Revenge. Now this was introduced in 2016 as Altonville Mine Tours Skin Snatchers. That would go on for a few years and then it would kind of get reworked and retooled into Altonville Mine Tours Tiny's Revenge. Once again, for me, whilst the scares in this one was absolutely superb, we actually got to experience this literally 5 minutes before our preview night ended, and there was actually only 2 of us in the group, so it made it even worse. It's still absolutely a brilliant maze, but for me, this is one that is clearly showing its time at the resort and needs to come to an end, in my opinion, for next year. Once again, there is nothing really set-wise that's changed there. You're going through these abandoned mine tours with this rumour that there's this big giant called Tiny that's still carrying on the legacy of the Skin Snatchers. You're in this sheriff hut, as she's explained this all to you. And there was a brief little change there in the sense of the sheriff dies. Normally, once she dies, you get dragged. Well, not dragged, you make your way into the actual mines itself. She dies, and then however a gas mask worker appears right in your face, and that's a really nice scare there. From that point on, you're going through the maze, you go through the odd point of where there's the gas mask workers coming up to you with pickaxes and, you know, trying to scare you off with there. You dive deeper into the mines, you've seen the cheerleaders that have still been captured there, and a few of the other prisoners of the Skin Snatchers as well being used to mutilate on. You go through there, you start to do some crawl sections. You've got the inflated body bags with the workers there, which I still think is a superb scene because you've got them in the uniforms. So you don't know which one's real. You know one of them's going to be real, but you can't work out which one because there's strobing lighting in there. And obviously one pops out and you absolutely pass yourself. That's a really great scene there. You're going through the mines once again. You're coming to go into these jars with like eyeballs, skins being stretched across the wall. You've got the cheerleaders and prisoners once again there saying, let me free, don't make me part of you. Or some of them have just gone completely backcrack crazy because they've been there for so long. You come towards the end of the maze, and then you've got obviously the sheriff telling you to get out there. They've got the air rifle there trying to hold you back, and as you go through there, you get chased off again by Tiny with a chainsaw. It's still the same as it has been for me last year, but it's so intense in there. It's claustrophobic, it's atmospheric, the theming's really well done. It's probably the best themed one along all three of the mazes. It just feels like it's had its time though. It feels a little bit tiring when you get to experience the same thing over and over again for the last 9 years. You know what's already coming, and it's not really exactly something that's going to set the world alight, but it's what holds it together. It's the scares and that tense atmosphere, having that themed towards the pit of the towers itself. It's a really great opportunity there to do something with. I just think I'd like to see something like Gaslit Gothic in there, something like a Terror of the Towers in that part of the section, like an underground dungeon filled with vampires and bloodless creatures. Something there to really play use on those Gothic themes, I think would do really well for the attraction. Altonville Mine Tours is still a great opportunity if you're looking to go and experience something there. Small groups as well, normally around 7 to 10 people, so you're not going to be overwhelmed with the numbers. You're all walking in as one group. You won't really get separated, although groups might try and hold you back. I know I got held back at one point by 2 of them, so I got split off from the other person in my group as they were carrying along. I pretty much went through the rest of it on my own. But it's really nice theming set pieces in there. The lighting's superb. I love the storyline. I love the storyline, the skin snatching element to it, and just seeing these mine workers going crazy as they're coming at you with pickaxes. The theming's really great. You can see like on their faces how they've really been captured by the dirt and all the gritty horrors of the mines. But I just think, for me personally, it sits in the middle. It's not the worst in terms of theming, but for me, it felt a lot more intense and scarier than Compound offered this year. I'd just like to see something a little bit refreshed for next year, and maybe see a different outing there for what could be of Altonville Mine Tours. Who knows if it will return? Chances are it's probably going to. It's a lot of money and a lot of time that gets spent into that part of the maze. Bear in mind, there was still stuff hang up for it again this year when you would walk past it. So it does almost seem like it's going to come back for next year. But you never know. I'd like to see something different in there. But still, a really great addition for Altonville Mine Tours of the Scarefest event. Definitely go and give this one a go if you're going to go and do it. And finally then, we come on to the big main event of Scarefest for a lot of people. It is Edge of the Forest, a Dark Forest story. Now, when this was initially constructed, we'll give a bit of pre-context to this. Alton Towers made 2 container / shipping sections on the park. One of them was located in Dark Forest, and one of them was located in the Forbidden Valley Gloomwood area. That would obviously be Compound. Now, it was heavily speculated that this was going to be a maze for Scarefest last year. However, it seems like they never got round to actually finishing it on time, hence why the attic came back for one last year and has now disappeared for this year, because this was clearly going to be the intended plan for the event. So, without further ado, Edge of the Forest, a Dark Forest story. As the description reads on the website, whispers wind through the withered woods at the edge of the dark forest, where a forgotten cottage stands at the last remnant of a forgotten time. Locals speak of the Leshwall, a lurking presence that twists the trees and plays tricks on the minds. Ignore the warnings and step inside this live-action scare maze, but be warned, the vine twists, the forest shifts with every step, and you're never alone. So instantly, we're getting that sense of we're going to be walking through a forested themed area. It's going to be something that's, plays a lot on dark ambient lighting, and obviously this big set piece of Leshwall, this kind of wooding tree looking like creature that's controlling the forest. When you go into the queue line itself, this is probably the weakest area of the actual maze so far. It's felt like it when we was walking around. It didn't feel exactly finished. Your pathway is just a bunch of scaffolding with an unpainted side of the fast track queue line, as some of the other people in our group got to find out. It didn't exactly feel ready and finished yet, which is kind of concerning because as we're recording, Scarefest starts on Saturday the 27th of September, so who knows, they might have to pull an all-nighter, but it didn't exactly feel like the queue line was ready, and also just that portion of the maze was ready for the opening of this event. But you walk through that. We got to experience this at around 8:30 in the evening. So there was some really great lighting coming from the trees. There's a noose hanging up in one of the sections of the queue wall, which I think is a little bit questionable. Given that in context, when I explain it in a second about the story of the maze, it doesn't really feel like it fits. I don't really know why the noose is there. But having like a green ambient lighting overlooking it, it does feel like this kind of menacing, like, build up to what you're about to experience with Edge of the Forest. You come round to that, it's a bit of a snaked queue, and then you come up towards these shipping containers once again. You're in groups of about 10 to 14, and just before you go in, there's actually a door, like a wooden doorway into one of the shipping containers. You knock on that, and then an old woman greets you into this little cottage. So you all head on in, you all gather around this fireplace and table, and the woman starts to explain the story behind what you're about to experience. You know, there's this creature called Lejwal, this mythical legend. You know, you've been warned, don't go into the dark forest because you never know what's going to come out of it. You know, just trying to basically warn you off that this creature Lejwal is coming for you. Strobe lighting, she then starts prancing around the room trying to be like, oh, be heed the warning of Lejwal, he will grab your soul. As she's going around the group, big strobe light to finish it off, she completely disappears, although you can see a little nook in the bookshelf. She completely disappears, to which at that point you go through into the forest. It's a really nicely themed area, little trees, you're going over these wooden bridges, there's an abandoned car towards one of the points, you've got the older actors that are clearly all marked up, all bloodied. Some of them look like 13 Wraith girls. Some of them are just these general people that have gotten lost in the woods. And you're thinking, wow, this is great. Really nice, bright pitching with bits of fog to make it feel like you're trying to crawl through this fogged woods as you're going through. You come out of that, and then you go back into the next room, which is the cottage. This little cottage room that you've just started the maze in. And you're thinking, hang on a minute, I've just been through this bit. You carry back through that. You go through the exact same wooded forest scene again. You know, the cars there, you still got the bridges, the tents, the trees are all there, and you're thinking, am I playing tricks on me? We've just been through this. And instantly from that point, I could kind of tell that we was getting like this Blair Witch-esque type of vibe. This idea that Lejwal was able to control what you're experiencing in the forest, making you lose sense of reality. You know, you're experiencing the same thing over and over, the definition of insanity. And that's what you kind of do for the first 3 or 4 rooms. You're just essentially going around the same rooms. You go in the cottage, you go in the forest, you go in the cottage, you go in the forest, you go in the cottage, in the forest. By that point, it starts to become a lot more broken and derelict within the environment. The cottage clearly has been ransacked. Lejwal's starting making his appearances all over the walls and paintings. Food and whatnot's been scattered all over the table. The woods start to become a lot more broken. There's trees falling over. The cars starting to flash lights, cracked windscreen. Actors are appearing a lot more frequently, really trying to warn you off from going in here. And at one point, you actually do get to see Lejwal. He's this really wooded, covered up creature in the cottage as he scares you there. You go through again and again, and it just gets much worse and worse in the environment, to the point where you're having to push yourself through these logged trees. You know, the cottage has started to become like this abandoned derelict. You're having to crawl down, go over stuff to try and get through. It really does start to build up towards the anticipation of the ending. You get through the cottage bit, you know, the woman's there once again like, you've been warned, you didn't listen. You needed to listen to my warning. You go through into like this bedroom scene, and there's this dead girl lying in the bed all bloodied. There's a Scarefest actor. The 13 Wraith girl actors on the either side of the room. There's like 2 exits and the bed's in the middle. So you're obviously getting scared. They're the flash wounds, got like, you've been warned. Goes all pitch black. Lejwals then appear everywhere. There's like 2 or 3 of them to either side of you in the room. As the light's gone, it's all green. It looks absolutely terrifying. And then you essentially just run straight out of that room. You head round a corridor, and then you head straight out into the exit of the maze there. To which then you get greeted by a photo video of yourselves in that final room, which I thought was a really interesting touch, one that you probably would never have noticed happened before with scare mazes, although it did happen in previous years, like 2010s. I thought that was a really interesting feature there. But like I said, you've come out screaming like that, you've seen Lejwal, you've now kind of had your soul taken, and that wraps up the Edge of the Forest, a Dark Forest story. For me, this was the strongest maze of the night. I wouldn't sit there and say it was absolutely perfect, as I was hearing from a lot of the other guests as well. I just felt like, for me personally, the ending was probably the weakest bit of the maze. It just didn't really, I don't know, there was something a little bit off about it. It felt a little bit messy how it was set up. It didn't exactly scream like this was going to happen, or like there's this big finale bit coming. You just kind of walked through, and then next thing you know, you're scared by all these ledge wells. Again, it made for a great sense of scare at the end. It just didn't really feel like it was having that build-up. I think the main problem that I was experiencing throughout the maze, and one that will probably get a lot of people, is the repetitive theming. I know a lot of people don't like the idea of repeating your rooms, going over through them. But for me personally, as somebody that's watched the Blair Witch Project, I think that's what really helps. If you're a fan of like the Blair Witch Project and like that, I think it's a really good, smart, divisive idea. It really questions what you're experiencing within the maze, and it really also makes you question what you're actually experiencing. You know, am I just being led through around a circle in the maze, or you know, whatnot? It's a really clever design idea, and I think really does play well into the idea of the story. This idea that Leisure was able to control the woods, able to control what you were able to experience, can't really make sense of reality. The other problem I have with the maze, though, is the storyline. It feels like you go into the maze and you get told this storyline and on from the description of the maze, but apart from that, there's no real sense more of an explanation. The noose doesn't really make sense as to why it's there at the start of the maze. There's no real elaboration further on, apart from the fact that you're just walking through a woods and you just so happen to encounter a ledge wall. I think it would have been nicer to see you know, leisure having a little bit more of an effect on these people, them explaining why, you know, you shouldn't have done this. Maybe take a little bit of a twist with it and see, you know, maybe somehow one of us becoming leisure or something like that. Just something to really help further advance the storyline of the maze, because it doesn't really feel like it goes anywhere. And I know it's meant to be themed to the Dark Forest, but if I'm looking at it, I wouldn't sit there and say 13 feels anywhere tied to this maze. It just feels like an expansion on the story of the Dark Forest rather than 13, which was the only thing that I felt was a real gripe in the maze. But overall, theming was absolutely superb. I love the idea of the maze. I think it's nice to see something again themed to a ride area of the attractions at the park. And it's just, I love the Blair Witch aspect of it. I just think it's so superb to go around those repeating rooms. I could go on that for the Dice Hill or just go and experience that for the rest of it. But that's a really clever addition. And overall, that and Dark Hollow as well is a really nice offering for the park. The theming is exceptional. You can clearly see that's where the focus of the attraction and the event itself this year went towards. And they've done a really good job of it. I'd like to see that build upon for next year. Give Compound another year to try and maybe have some scene changes. Maybe get rid of Mine Tours and let's see maybe 1 or 2 new scare mazes in there. And let's hopefully see, you know, more of these ride-based attractions getting built, because I think that's where it's at its strongest. When they come up with their own original stories, it does feel like it kind of gets a little bit lost in it, whereas at least you've got the background of your rides. So maybe something, again, like similar to the Sanctuary, something themed alongside that. It'd be nice to see a Cursor or Manor-based maze, because bear in mind, the ride's already got a lot of story there. Build upon that, I think you'd have a great attraction there, although they kind of missed the mark with it not being open within the ride's year. But something like that for next year, really invest in your scare zones. I think that would be a really key event. But Edge of the Forest, sorry, is a really great experience for Alton Towers, and definitely sits as my favourite for the Alton Towers Scarefest event. So that's been my thoughts on Scarefest preview nights. Like I said, a lot of this can change as the event goes on. We only got to experience you know, the first instance of it, so bear in mind, you know, if you're going to the event, you may see some changes. It doesn't reflect on what you're going to experience overall for the event. However, given what I've described for you for the mazes and the scare zones, you know, if you're a recurring member of Scarefest attraction visiting, you're going to get to experience the exact same things. If you're new to the event, there's a lot of good offerings there. Overall, I would say this is a strong Scarefest year, not only from the scare mazes and scare zones being offered to the guests, but also just the general theming across the park and some of the changes that they've made as well. Not only that, you've got your rides in the dark, CBeebies Land's also even got a Halloween ball, general family entertainment. I think that's a great offering all around for the park. But I hope you did enjoy this video, guys. Please leave in the comments down below or interact and say what your favourite aspect of Scarefest was. But without further ado, we'll see you for the next video where we'll be at Vault Park for Fright Nights. Hope you have enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.